Widowed firefighter rescued a runaway heiress from a burning hotel. She taught him how to love again. The heat was suffocating, pressing against Cale Draven's skin like a living beast clawing to devour him whole. He pushed through the smoke-choked corridor of the Regal Crown Hotel, axe in hand, boots crunching over shattered glass. His breathing mask hissed with each inhale. The sound of reminder air was precious here, and seconds meant lives. He had already led 2 terrified guests out through a stairwell. But when he turned back, the dispatcher's voice crackled again in his earpiece. "Floor 5 still has movement. Don't leave anyone behind." He didn't need to be told twice. That was Kyle's way. Duty wasn't a word to him, it was the marrow in his bones. Even after losing his wife to a factory fire 3 years ago, he had never walked away. If anything, the tragedy had anchored him deeper in the service. Now every rescue was his way of spitting in fate's face. Every person he saved was a defiance of the flames that had taken everything from him. But the 5th floor was hell itself. Ceiling beams sagged under heat. Wallpaper peeled like burning parchment. The hallway buckled with each groan of collapsing structure. Kyle swung his axe at a door swollen with smoke pressure. Splintering it open, his flashlight beam cut through the haze, and that was when he saw her. She was crouched behind a fallen beam, the tulle of her gown torn, ash streaking across skin that had never known dirt before tonight. Her dark hair clung in damp strands against her cheek, but her eyes, sharp furious, met his with a defiance he hadn't expected. Most people in fire pleaded for life. She looked like she was daring it to finish the job. "Help me move this," Kyle balked, shouldering his axe under the beam. "I can't," she rasped, voice hoarse. "If I come out, they'll find me." Kyle frowned beneath his mask. There was no time to untangle that. He shifted, bracing his legs, lifting the timber enough to drag her free. She hissed as the wood scraped her leg. But when he scooped her up, she didn't fight. Not physically. Only her words resisted. "Don't take me back," she whispered fiercely, fingers curling against his turnout coat. "I'd rather burn than go back." The words struck him harder than the heat. He didn't know who she meant, but her desperation was raw, a different kind of fire. Kyle only tightened his grip and ran, shielding her body with his own as plaster rained down. The exit was a blur of smoke flame and collapsing debris. By the time they burst into the night air, the crowd surged forward, cameras flashing, people shouting, medics rushing in. Kyle set her down gently on the pavement. She gasped for breath, coughing violently, but her hand clung to his sleeve like a lifeline. Reporters already screamed her name, Celiora Valen, Heiress of Valen Corp. Cale blinked, the recognition sparking. He had seen her face once or twice in magazines his late wife used to read, always framed in jewels gowns and gilded privilege. But here, covered in soot, trembling with rage and terror. She was nothing like the smiling photos. "Miss Valen, were you alone?" a medic demanded, kneeling with an oxygen mask. She shoved the mask away. "I said, don't take me back." Her voice cracked, her gaze darting wildly to the crowd pressing forward. Suits too polished too fast were already weaving through the onlookers. Bodyguards, hunters, Cale couldn't tell, but their eyes locked on her like predators. "Sir," one of the medics urged, "we'll take it from her." But Celiora's nails dug into Kyle's sleeve. "Don't let them touch me." He hesitated. This wasn't his place. He was a firefighter, not a bodyguard. His job was to pull people from burning buildings, not from whatever chains their families forged. Yet her plea sank deep. He saw in her eyes the same hollow desperation he'd once seen in his wife's, just before that factory collapsed. The helplessness of knowing you were trapped in someone else's design. The suited men reached the police line, flashing credentials Cale didn't trust. Celiora flinched. Cale made a decision he'd question later. He bent, scooped her up again, and pushed through the rear of the crowd, away from the medics, the cameras, the hunters. "Sir, where are you?" The shouts faded into the chaos. Kale only ran, boots pounding against wet asphalt. Celiora's breath ragged against his chest. His truck was 2 blocks away, parked beyond the cordon. He shoved her inside, stripped off his gear, and pulled them both into the driver's seat. His radio crackled with confused voices demanding his status. He switched it off. Only when the truck roared to life did she finally whisper, "Why are you helping me?" Kyle's grip tightened on the wheel. He didn't know. He only knew that letting her go back felt like handing her to the fire, and he had sworn long ago never to lose another life to flames, whether of wood and ash, or of greed and power. She stared at him, face pale beneath soot. "If you take me home, you'll regret it. They'll make you regret it." Her warning was not a threat. It was a truth she had lived with too long. Kyle's jaw clenched. He had regrets enough already. One more couldn't scare him. Behind them, sirens howled louder, as if the whole city were burning. Kyle drove without speaking. The fire engine's substitute truck growled down the slick streets. Rain had started to fall. It steamed as it hit the hot ash, clinging to his gear. Beside him, Celiora sat rigid, her gown clinging in damp folds, her fingers twisting a singed ribbon as though it were the only tether to her own body. He risked a glance at her. She was pale, her breaths uneven, but her eyes never left the window. Watching, waiting, hunting shadows in every car that passed. "You should be in a hospital," Kyle said finally, his voice gravel. "They'll find me there." Her answer came too quickly, too rehearsed. "Who the ones my father sent?" She turned her expression sharp despite the exhaustion. "You don't understand. He won't let me go. Not when my absence would shame him. Not when I'm meant to marry a man who can double his empire." Kale's jaw tightened. He didn't know her world of velvet cages and business empires, but he knew chains when he saw them. The truck rumbled into his neighborhood, quiet streets where porch lights glowed against modest homes. When he pulled into the gravel drive of his 2-story house, Celiora's eyes widened. "You're taking me home." "Where else?" Kale muttered, killing the engine. "At least here no one's watching you." The front door creaked open before he could knock. His daughter Mara appeared in her pajamas, her hair tangled from sleep. At 9 years old, she already bore a seriousness that no child should. Loss had carved that into her. She froze at the sight of Celiora. "Dad, who is she?" Kyle bent, brushing ash from his sleeve before answering. "Someone who needed help. Just for tonight." Celiora crouched despite her torn gown, her voice softening. "Hello, Mara." There was something gentle in the way she spoke, a warmth that wasn't rehearsed like her earlier defiance. Mara blinked, then gave a small nod, stepping aside to let them in. The house smelled faintly of cedar and soap, the kind of home built by routine rather than luxury. Kyle set a blanket on the couch and gestured. "You can stay here until morning, then we'll figure it out." Celiora sat carefully, her gown whispering across the fabric. For a moment she seemed fragile, almost breakable, but when she spoke, her voice carried steel again. "They won't wait until morning." Kyle frowned. "You think they'd follow you here? I know they will." She looked down, fingers twisting. "My father's people. They don't ask questions. They bring me back no matter the cost." Mara glanced between them, confusion knitting her brow. "Dad, is she in trouble?" Kyle crouched beside his daughter, resting a hand on her shoulder. Not the kind you need to worry about. But inside, worry gnawed at him. If what Celiora said was true, then by bringing her here, he had painted a target on their door. Later, when Mara had gone back to bed, Celiora stood by the window, staring into the rain, her reflection ghostly in the glass, eyes rimmed red but burning with something more dangerous than tears. "Why did you help me?" she asked, without turning. Kyle leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Because you asked. That's simple, that's simple. For a moment, silence held. Then her laugh slipped out. Brittle, but real. No one in my world does anything without weighing profit or loss. You're either very noble or very foolish. Maybe both. She turned at that, studying him with an intensity that unsettled him more than the fire had. You don't even know who I am. I know you're someone who didn't want to be dragged back. That's enough. Her gaze softened. For the first time, the armor in her voice cracked. Thank you. The knock came just after midnight. 3 sharp raps against the wooden door. Mara stirred upstairs. Kyle rose instantly, every instinct alive. He motioned Celiora back and stepped to the entry. Kyle drove in. The voice outside was smooth, official, too smooth. He didn't answer. We're here for Miss Valen. She's unsafe with you. Please open the door. Celiora's face blanched. She mouthed, don't. Kyle tightened his grip on the doorknob. His house was small, his life smaller, but it was the one place where his daughter slept safe. He wouldn't let strangers breach that. Leave, he called. Voice cold. A pause. Then the voice hardened. You're making a mistake. Footsteps retreated, though Kyle knew it wouldn't be the end. When he returned to the living room, Celiora's hands trembled where they clutched the blanket. They'll try again, she whispered. Kyle sat across from her. The old grief in his chest stirred by her fear. He had lived through fire once. He knew what it meant to be haunted. Then we'll be ready, he said. Her eyes lifted, meeting his. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Not trust, not yet, but the fragile beginning of it. And yet in the silence that followed, Kyle couldn't ignore the truth clawing at him. Shelter came with a cost, and the storm outside his door was only just beginning. The morning light filtered weakly through the blinds, casting stripes across the worn living room rug. Kyle hadn't slept. He sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold, listening to the sound of Celiora moving quietly upstairs. She had borrowed one of Mara's oversized sweaters. Though it hung awkwardly on her frame, it made her look less like a magazine heiress, and more like someone ordinary, someone who could belong here. Mara came down in her school uniform, rubbing her eyes. She stopped when she saw Celiora at the stove, hair tied back with a ribbon she had salvaged from her gown. You're cooking, Mara asked, blinking. Celiora smiled faintly. I hope you don't mind scrambled eggs. It's all I could find. Mara's eyes widened. Dad doesn't usually make breakfast. We just grab cereal. Kyle cleared his throat, embarrassed. We're usually in a rush. Celiora placed the eggs on the table, her movements graceful despite the exhaustion etched on her face. Well then, today's different. Mara grinned, sliding into a chair. For the first time in months, Kyle saw genuine excitement on his daughter's face. Something that cut deeper than he expected. It reminded him of the woman who used to make mornings feel whole, his late wife Elira. He shook the thought away before it consumed him. After Mara left for school, Kyle found Celiora in the backyard, sitting on the old wooden swing that creaked with each shift of her weight. She held a mug of tea between her palms, staring at the quiet street beyond the fence. They'll find me eventually, she said softly. Kyle leaned against the porch railing. Then tell me why they're chasing you. Maybe I can help. She turned, eyes sharp again, as if deciding how much to reveal. Do you know what my father's company does? Factories, shipping, real estate. That's the surface. Her grip tightened on the mug. Underneath bribery, cover-ups, forced deals. Entire families crushed so he can build another tower. I ran because I couldn't sign my name to it anymore. And because... She hesitated, swallowing hard. Because the man he wants me to marry is worse. Kyle's gut tightened. He had seen the headlines about corporate scandals, but it was different hearing it like this. Personal. Raw. "What happens if you refuse?" he asked. Siliora's voice dropped. "He'll make sure no one refuses him again. Not me. Not anyone." The weight of her words pressed into Cale's chest. He thought of Elira's death, the fire at the textile factory. The official report had called it an accident, a faulty wire. But Kyle had always suspected more. The company had fought hard to suppress the investigation. He had never connected it to Valin Corp before. Now suspicion flickered like a spark in dry timber. Later that afternoon, Kyle picked Mara up from school. She climbed into the truck, chattering about a drawing contest, her face glowing in a way he hadn't seen since before Elira died. "Celiora helped me with my hair this morning," Mara said. "She braided it just like Mom used to." Kyle's grip on the steering wheel faltered. He glanced at his daughter, her innocent smile cutting through layers of grief. Celiora had stepped into their world like a storm, uninvited yet changing everything. When they returned home, Celiora was in the living room, laughter spilling from her lips as she tried and failed to repair the old record player Kyle had given up on years ago. Mara rushed to her side, offering expert advice in the way only a child could. Kyle stood in the doorway watching. For the first time in years, the house felt alive, yet part of him recoiled. It wasn't fair, this sudden warmth. It wasn't safe. He could feel the shadow of her father's reach stretching toward them even now. That night, after Mara had gone to bed, Kyle confronted Celiora. "You're good with her," he admitted, voice low. "But this, whatever this is, it's dangerous." Celiora's smile faded. "I never meant to bring danger to your door. Yet here we are." He paced, running a hand through his hair. "If your family's as powerful as you say, keeping you here puts Mara at risk. I can't—" His throat tightened. "I can't lose her too." Celiora's eyes glistened. "I understand, but where else can I go? If I leave, they'll drag me back. If I stay—" Her voice broke. "At least here I feel human." Kyle stopped, the rawness in her tone cutting through his resolve. He remembered the way Mara had smiled that morning, the sound of her laughter with Celiora. It was more than shelter. It was healing, and it terrified him. He opened his mouth to speak, but headlights swept across the window. A black car idled at the curb. Too sleek, too deliberate for this neighborhood. Kyle's instincts flared. Celiora stiffened. "They've found me." Kyle moved to the window, his jaw set. He recognized the men stepping out, two of the same suits from the hotel, eyes scanning the house like hunters circling prey. "Stay with Mara," he ordered, his voice iron. "I'll handle this." Celiora caught his arm. "They won't just leave. You don't know what you're up against." He looked at her, the weight of grief and fire etched into his gaze. "I've faced worse." He stepped onto the porch as rain began to fall again, each drop hissing against the quiet street. The men in suits paused, their polished shoes gleaming under the streetlight. Mr. Draven once said smoothly, "We'll make this simple. Hand over Miss Valin. Tonight. No one gets hurt." Kyle's voice was steady, though his pulse thundered. "She's not yours to take." The man's smile sharpened. "Then you've just declared war on the Valin family." Inside, Celiora clutched Mara close, her heart pounding. For the first time in her gilded life, someone stood between her and the shadows. But the cost of that choice had only just begun to burn. The rain intensified, pelting the porch roof as Kyle stared down the men in suits. Neither side moved. The neighborhood was silent curtains drawn in nearby houses. People had learned long ago not to interfere when black cars came at night. "You're trespassing," Kyle said finally, his voice low. One of the men chuckled, the sound sharp against the storm. "We're retrieving family property. Best not to confuse yourself with the hero, Mr. Draven." The word property made Cale's stomach twist. Before he could reply, the men stepped closer. Cale's fists tightened. He didn't want a fight, not with Mara inside, but he would never let them breach that door. Headlights suddenly cut across the street. A police cruiser rolled up its siren, silent but lights flashing. The men cursed under their breath. With stiff smiles, they retreated toward their car. "This isn't over," one hissed. Kyle watched until their taillights vanished into the rain. Only then did he exhale, shoulders heavy with tension. Inside, Celiora clutched Mara, her knuckles white. "They'll keep coming," she whispered. "I know," Kyle admitted. His heart pounded with both relief and dread. Tonight had been a warning. Tomorrow might be worse. The next day, whispers spread. At the firehouse, Cale overheard colleagues murmuring about his new guest. One of them, Rourke, a sharp-eyed veteran, clapped him on the shoulder. "Word is you dragged more than fire out of that hotel." Heiress Vaylin herself, Cale stiffened. "Don't believe everything you hear." Rourke smirked, cities buzzing. "Papers want to know why she vanished with a firefighter instead of her security team. You're either reckless or lucky, my friend." Cale gave no answer, but inside unease gnawed. The media storm was building. Celiora's presence in his home wouldn't stay secret. When he returned that evening, Mara met him at the door, excitement in her eyes. "Celiora taught me how to dance. Dad, she says I'm good." He forced a smile, his chest twisting. He should be pulling away from this, not letting it weave deeper into their lives. But every laugh, every glimpse of joy on Mara's face drew him closer. Celiora appeared behind Mara. Her hair braided her smile, faint. "I hope you don't mind," she asked. Kyle studied her, torn. "I mind the danger that follows you." Her smile faded. "I never wanted this. But running is all I know." 2 nights later, the truth exploded. The news ran a special broadcast, hidden documents leaked by an anonymous source. Vaylin Corp's empire laid bare bribes, extortion, unsafe factories pushed beyond regulation. Kyle froze as he watched coffee mug trembling in his hand. Among the names listed in the report was Elira Draven, the factory fire, where she died cited as containment of liability. The company had known. They had covered it. Celiora entered the room, face ashen. She saw the screen, the headline blazing, "Runaway Heiress, missing amid scandal." Kyle turned to her, his voice breaking. "It was your family, your father's company. They killed her." Celiora flinched as though struck. "Kyle, I didn't know. You lived in that palace while we buried her. You knew nothing while Mara cried herself to sleep for months. And now you sit here." His voice cracked into a roar. "In my house." Tears welled in Celiora's eyes. "If I'd known, I'd have burned that empire myself." Her words rang desperate, but Cale's grief was wildfire. He pushed past her hands, shaking. Memories crashed Elira's smile, her final morning, the unanswered questions he had buried. And now the truth was branded with Celiora's name. Mara appeared at the stairs, confusion in her sleepy eyes. "Dad, what's wrong?" Cale forced his voice steady. "Go back to bed, Mara." She looked at Celiora, sensing the fracture. "Did you do something bad?" Celiora knelt, tears spilling. "No, sweet one. But my family, they've done terrible things." Mara's lip trembled. "But you're not like them?" Cale's chest heaved. He wanted to believe it, but the wound was too raw. That night he slept on the couch staring at the ceiling, rage and sorrow clawing through him. He could still hear Celiora's muffled sobs upstairs. He hated that he cared. He hated that Mara cared more. By morning, Celiora was gone. A note sat on the table. "I can't undo what they took from you, but I won't let them take anything else. I'll end this myself." Kyle's hand shook as he read it. His chest ached with both fury and fear. She was walking back into the fire, alone, and part of him wanted to let her. To let vengeance consume her family and everything tied to them. But Mara's voice broke through his storm. Dad, we have to help her. He looked at his daughter, the same resolve in her young eyes that had once shone in Elira's. He couldn't abandon Celiora. Not like this. Kyle grabbed his jacket. Then we bring her back. Whatever it takes. Outside, the storm had cleared, but in Kyle's heart, the fire was only beginning. The city skyline glimmered with sterile light. Kyle pulled his truck into the industrial quarter, following the trail Celiora had left behind. Every nerve screamed against the decision, walking straight toward the empire that had gutted his life. But Mara's words echoed louder than doubt. We have to help her. He found her near the docks, standing in the rain beneath a shattered billboard that once bore her family's name. She wasn't in silk now, just a dark coat, hood drawn, trembling from more than cold. You shouldn't be here, she whispered as he approached. And you shouldn't be doing this alone, he shot back. If you mean to take on your family, then I won't let you vanish into the fire without me. Celiora's eyes shone with both relief and despair. They'll destroy you if you stand beside me. Kale's jaw tightened. They already destroyed me once. What's left to lose? Together they infiltrated a warehouse, the heart of Valen Corp's offshore dealings. Inside ledgers and encrypted drives mapped the Empire's rot. Celiora moved quickly, snapping photos, transferring files. She was shaking, but her resolve was iron. Then voices echoed from the stairwell. Men in suits, armed, their steps deliberate. Kale pulled Celiora behind crates, heart hammering. We need an exit. Celiora pointed to a rusted side door, but before they reached it, the guards spotted them. Shouts erupted, boots thundered. Kyle lunged. His firefighter's strength slammed one man against a beam. Another came swinging, gun raised. Kyle twisted the wrist. The weapon clattered to the floor. Celiora grabbed it, hands trembling, aiming though she'd never fired before. Stay back, she cried. For a tense moment, the room froze. Rain drummed against broken glass. Then a voice cut through. Cold, commanding. Well, well. My wayward daughter. Celiora's father, Lucirin Valine, stepped from the shadows. Immaculate suit, silver hair slicked, his smile sharp as a blade. I wondered where you'd scurried off to. And now I see the hero Firefighter. How poetic. Celiora's breath hitched. I won't let you bury more lives. Not again. Lucirin chuckled. And you think parading with stolen files will change anything? Empires aren't dismantled by truth, child. They're built on bending it. Kyle stepped forward, rage searing his chest. Tell that to the families buried because of you. Tell that to my wife. Lucerin's gaze flickered, then softened with mockery. Ah, yes. The Dreven woman. Collateral, nothing more. Kyle's fist flew before thought. It cracked across Lucerin's jaw. Chaos ignited. Guards lunged. Celiora screamed. The warehouse erupted into violence. In the struggle, Celiora clutched the drive. She sprinted toward the side exit. Kyle fought like a man possessed. Every strike fueled by Elira's memory. Every block for Celiora's survival. But numbers overwhelmed. A blow to his ribs dropped him to one knee. Celiora whirled back, terror in her eyes. She could run, save herself, save the files. But she saw Kale fall, blood at his lip, defiance still burning. Something broke inside her. She fired the gun. Once, twice. The guards scattered, shocked by her sudden fury. Grabbing Kale's arm, she dragged him toward the storm outside. They stumbled into the rain. Tires screeched as Lucerin's men regrouped. Kyle gasped, half laughing through pain. You're braver than you think. Celiora's tears mingled with rain. Not brave, just tired of running. They didn't stop until the first light of dawn painted the horizon. In a small press office, Kyle trusted they dumped everything. The files, the recordings, the proof. Reporters stared wide-eyed as the Empire's skeletons spilled across their desks. Within hours, headlines erupted. Valin Empire exposed, arrest warrants imminent. Lucerin was cornered at last, but victory felt hollow. Kale sat on the hospital bed, ribs bandaged, exhaustion etched deep. Celiora stood at the window, watching the sunrise. Silence stretched between them, heavy with what had been broken and what might never be repaired. Finally, Kyle spoke. "I don't know if I can forgive what your family stole from me." Celiora's shoulders trembled. "I don't ask forgiveness, only a chance, to build something different, to give Mara and you more than ashes." Kyle studied her, torn between scars and the fragile hope she offered. He saw the woman who had danced with Mara, who had risked everything to face her own blood, who had chosen him in the fire. Perhaps forgiveness wasn't the word, perhaps survival was. He reached for her hand. For a moment she hesitated. Then she took it. Weeks later, the neighborhood whispered again. Not about scandal, but about the firefighter who had stood against a dynasty, and the heiress who had traded jewels for truth. Kyle still bore his scars. Celiora still carried her shadows, but when Mara laughed between them, her small hands tugging theirs together, it felt like a beginning. Not redemption, not erasure, but something stronger, a fire rekindled from ruin. Sometimes the fiercest battles aren't fought with fire or fists, but with the courage to face the truths we've been running from. Kyle and Celiora discovered this. Healing doesn't mean erasing the past. It means choosing what kind of future to build from its ashes. What about you? Have you ever had to confront a painful truth? In order to move forward, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if this journey stayed with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more.